Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Resilient Riches. We have the Jewish Jordan, Tamir Goodman, here, who's not only a basketball legend amongst the Jewish world, which makes him the superstar. That's why they called him the Jewish Jordan. But he's also a business owner, pushing the world and changing things up in such a different perspective. Tamir, we're really excited to have you. We know you're the head of sports relations at FabricNet, the AvivNet, and you have a book, you have a movie, you have basically everything that you're doing, and also speaking up for the Jewish people. So we really appreciate you coming on. We know you hail from Jerusalem, so we won't put it against you that you're not in Tel Aviv right now, but great to see you, and thanks so much for coming on. Can you give us a little bit of your origin story? I know everybody knows your story, but can you give us your origin story?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I fell in love with basketball at a very young age, and I decided that I wanted to show the world that you could get a Division I scholarship to play college basketball and professional basketball without playing on Shabbat. That was seen as impossible at the time, but thank God I had really good parents, really good family, really good coaches, really good support system. By the time I was 17, I was ranked the 25th best player in America. And ultimately, through a lot of bumps and crazy journey, I was able to live out my dream, get a Division I scholarship without having to play on Shabbat or any Jewish holidays, and then play professionally for 7 years without playing on Shabbat. So got to live out my dream. And then I also served in the IDF, met my wife here in Israel. Thank God we've been blessed with 5 children. And after I retired from playing professionally because I hurt my knee, I invented a basketball device that I thought was really great. We got it in the NBA called Zone 190. Unfortunately, that product got stolen from me, and I decided I was going to take a break from startups and just focus on basketball, which I did. I built up a really successful international basketball company here in Jerusalem, camps, clinics, speaking engagements, and scouting, which is going really well all the way up until Corona. Then Corona hit, and all basketball was shut down. And I had to go back on my promise and get back in the startup space, first by launching the AvivNet with my dear friend David Warshawski. It's the first ever antimicrobial and moisture-wicking basketball net, which means it dries the ball 11 times more than a standard net because the ball is very slippery in the game. And also it disinfects the ball from germs and bacteria because the ball is really gross. And then we have this advertising component where you could advertise in-game, brands could advertise in-game on the net because it's the most viewed part of the game. So people advertise all over, even on the referees' jerseys now. And now we're it's like the best real estate. So it's, everything in sports has moved over to like high performance. No one wears like the standard jersey anymore. They only wear high performance jersey. So we created the first high performance net, which also allows teams to have new revenue in a new space, which is advertising on the net. Just as I was launching that, I got an incredible phone call from Fabric. Said they invented this incredible mixed reality technology, but they were going to launch on campuses and during COVID, so they had to make a pivot to sports, and that's where they brought me in as the head of sports relations. And I'm very glad to say that today we do mixed reality loyalty and rewards for the NBA, MLB, NHL, and MLS, and basically same thing. It's allowing a new way to make money for teams because people advertise throughout the arena. Brands, for example, they don't really know what the return on investment is because how many people are going to actually buy a product just because they see that signage in the arena? Nobody knows. But through mixed reality, we could take the brands and their advertisement or whatever coupon they want to offer, put it directly in the fan's phone. And once they engage in it, they now know how many people are interacting and how much their return on investment is for advertising in-game at live events or sporting events or concerts or whatever it is. And we also do many, many other things in the sports space in mixed reality for the top leagues in the world. And now we're actually branching out to like boxing and real estate and all sorts of other areas. So it's really exciting.
I'm Orthodox and also into sports, into not so much basketball, but I have to ask and I heard about you a long time ago. I remember it was across, the first person that was able to get a scholarship and to play professional basketball, being Shomer Shabbos. What did they first say to you when you first, okay, we're going to give you a scholarship to Tamir Goodman? What did they first say to you when you say, oh, by the way, thank you for your scholarship, but by the way, there's some days I can't play?
Yeah, I think by the time I got to that point, thank God people have already heard about me because when I was 16, I got invited to a very prestigious invitational camp against the best high school players in America, and a lot of college coaches were there. And I played well there, and I got invited to play in the All-Star game after playing there for a week. And when that week was over, they invited me to play in the All-Star game on national TV. And I was only 16. It was a Friday morning. And I told the owner of the camp, I can't do it. I don't play basketball on Shabbat. And I left the camp. I didn't play in the All-Star game. And I went back to Maryland for Shabbat. And I think from that moment, more and more people started realizing I was only 16. So by the time I was 18, actually Coach Jazz and Towson University, they reached out to me and said, we read about you in the paper. The guys on the team aren't Jewish, but they respect your faith. Can we help you out? We'd love to try to help you out. And that's how that happened. So
That's some awesome
I grew up with a Holocaust survivor. My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. My father was of blessed memory, was a very proud Jew. And that's just the type of house that I grew up in. And I never really played basketball for myself. I always tried to play for a higher purpose. And that's why when Sports Illustrated interviewed me, I put my tefillin on, because it wasn't about me. It was always something bigger than myself. So that's the way I was raised, and it's the way I was coached. And I've always played basketball for that reason. I think like if we do things for our own ego, like if I would have just played basketball because I was feeding my own ego, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made the good times or the bad times. I would have crashed. But I think when we play for something higher than ourselves, or whatever we do in life, do it for something higher than ourselves, it gives us like extra motivation. It gives us extra superpower, because you're never settled. You're never satisfied. There's always more to do. It's not about you. For me, I always felt like I had to get back in the gym, even if I played really well. Or if I messed up and I wasn't doing well, I had to get back on track, because it wasn't about me. It was something bigger than myself. So I think Judaism, people sometimes say Judaism gets in the way of reaching your goals, but I learned through basketball on this journey that no, it just shows you how to get to your goals in a more empowered and meaningful way. That's what I've kind of learned through my Judaism and basketball mission.
I actually find your story, that your story didn't end with basketball, with playing basketball. There's a lot of players, and we know a lot of players. We have clients who are players, that they'll make a ton of money and then they get burnt out and then they stop and then they just like kind of drift for the rest of their lives afterwards, and just they'll make 30, 40, 50 million dollars, and then they'll hope for the best and hope that that money doesn't run out and be done with it. But your story is actually just a continuation of your story. Your story, and it's so interesting because your story is just a continuing of success that you had. So you started at 16, but I don't see yourself burning out at all. Are you just coasting at all? Are you just like trying to be a coach at one of the teams, which is admirable, but you're constantly pushing? Why is it that you're constantly pushing? Do you feel that after you finished playing basketball, after you got injured, that you should stop? Or what was the driver to continue going into this path?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think a lot of times in basketball, there's like this energy of like, I'm going to show that coach how good I am, or I'm going to prove that person wrong. But I was raised the opposite of that, because like if you get your energy from trying to prove other people wrong, once you prove them wrong, then what? So it was never about that ego for me. It was always about trying to reach my potential and what God sees in me. And like once you're doing that, it's unlimited, because God is infinite. So it's like if you're always trying to win the day and what God's expecting from you, you're shooting much higher than if you were just going after ego or to prove someone else wrong. And yes, me not being able to play basketball after my knee injury was like a really hard thing. Like knowing that I could not play and do my favorite thing that I'd love to do. But my wife told me, I called her from the locker room. I knew I was done. Even before I made it to the hospital, I knew from the injury my career was over. I called her from the locker room and she said, don't worry, Tamir, you'll be doing the same thing. You're just wearing a different uniform. And she was right. It was always about trying to do good things and sanctify God's name through basketball. Now that I can't physically play anymore professionally, I'm still doing the same thing. Everything I'm involved in is trying to do good through the game, whether it's the entrepreneurship or the chesed, the kindness, charity initiatives through basketball, or coaching the kids, or everything I do is under that umbrella. It's never been about me. It's always trying to make God proud, I guess.
You know, it's very interesting because we have a lot of clients also that in the financial world, which is where we live, you know, a lot of the traders that we knew, you know, technology took over, and all of a sudden they find within a short period of time that they're without a job because technology has taken over their position. And a lot of them that we knew that were clients or still clients, they didn't know what to do. They couldn't redefine themselves because that was their whole identity, that was who they were. They didn't have this message that you had. They didn't have this separate sense of self. A lot of them, you know, we met them, they're just like hanging around the house. You know, they don't really know what to do. A few of them we know redevelop themselves like you did, like you redefined, because on the core, you're different. You know, you're on the core, you're strong, and you know who you are. You just have to apply it somewhere else. The same principles, the same person that you are. It's a strong message.
And my dad, when my dad
Yeah,
talks to traders, he's talking about like the New York Stock Exchange trader and the American Stock Exchange traders. And the story was that the exchanges were bringing in technology into the trading platforms. So what happened? All the traders went on strike and they said, all right, we're not doing it. So what happened? The exchange had to go, let me take all this technology and let's implement it right now because our traders just abandoned us. So now the traders go, oh my God, there's technology coming in. They're going to take our jobs. We want to come back. And the exchanges were like, sorry, it's too late. And they all lost their jobs overnight. It was like it was
right.
like record levels of suicide, record levels of depression. Like, and they made all this money. We see kids at the back. We like it. It's sanctifying of
Yeah.
God. I got my kids in the other side listening to Coco Melon. I know.
So yeah, I mean, I think one thing though for sure in the basketball space, and I try to do it when I coach with the kids now, is I mean, at least like the way I grew up, not from my personal coaches, but like when I go to like these elite camps and elite basketball, whatever academies and stuff, it's like it was basketball. They said that ball is life, basketball is life, which is true. But I always felt like coaches should also instill, like you almost felt. I remember feeling bad when my brother got married, asking coach if I could go to the wedding because it's like, how can you miss practice, right? You can't miss practice no matter what. But like now that of course you're going to your brother's wedding. Like there's life. Like when you're on the court, you're training at 1,000,000%. Of course, like look how many. It's almost impossible to get a Division I scholarship. It's almost impossible. I think there's millions of kids around the world playing high school basketball that I think there's only 3,000 or 4,000 scholarships out of all the millions of kids. It's like there's almost no chance of you getting a Division I scholarship, especially if you can't play on Shabbat or Jewish holidays. But there's still life. There's still life. Like, and I don't think that makes you a worse player. Like when you're on the court, go for it. You're training like crazy. You're pushing yourself. But like, I think it'll help players if coaches also say, hey, you know, go spend some time with your family. Players almost feel bad sometimes, but I feel it's important to have a balanced life too sometimes.
If you know, are you familiar with Penn State wrestling? Have you ever heard? Yeah. So Penn State wrestling, coached by Cael Sanderson, one of the best Olympians, wrestlers in history, undefeated in college. We interviewed Jason Nolf, one of the prodigies of Cael Sanderson, and he says that before their finals match, and for the NCAAs, they do Bible study. He goes, we do not burn them out. We do not do these crazy practices. They're all, I mean, they're religious. They're obviously more Christian, but he goes, we do not do any of that. We specifically focus on like, you have to have, if you don't have high grades, like high grades come first. You have to go to your wedding. Like you have to live your life first. And they become they're the best wrestling school in history. I mean, they're an unbelievable wrestling team. And that's like the insight.
Yeah, that's how I went to practice every day for professional basketball. You had to be there practice 2 hours before. I was there, change, do whatever I had to do for basketball. And I would open up a Jewish study book and I would just study Torah until they told me we're hitting the floor. And then I'd go up to the floor and practice. And I felt like I got to practice with such a clear head. And I was working from inside out instead of outside in. And that was very, very helpful for basketball. So I could definitely relate to that.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Listen, I'm sure you've had some correspondence with Amari Stoudemire through his conversion and through his, I'm sure you've been, I mean, that's another crazy story, you know, and you see him in round, like you'll see, look in the back of the study hall and there he is. He's, he's taking up 2 seats, but there he is. I'm sure it's like it's inspiring story, but when you're living it like we are every day, I see that. That makes sense.
Well, I think like the Torah tells us to make ourselves a rabbi, make ourselves a mentor, you know, and the Torah, it's so brilliant. It's such great advice because you want to be around someone who could push you, someone who believes in you, someone that won't let you quit, someone that you could tell everything to. And I'm 42 years old. I don't know a lot of people in the world. I'm 42 years old. Since I was 7 years old, I've had the same coach that never let me settle, that was always teaching me the way to be, always pushing me, and that always believed in me. I was actually just talking to him right before this call too, and so that's like a huge advantage that I had. Like most people don't have that in life, and also my parents, like how many people like when you're 7 years old, tell your parent, you tell your parents what you want to do. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like my parents are, let's go, let's go make it happen. Even though my mother didn't know anything about basketball, so I was very blessed that I had it wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have grown up the way that I grew up.
So I don't know. We had a podcast on for Rose Lubin. She was murdered by in Jerusalem at the beginning around, I don't know, but the first week of October.
Yeah.
So we interviewed her parents separately on our podcast, and they were saying that she was into wrestling. So she would make her mother walk with her like 10 miles or something on Shabbat because she wanted to wrestle. But she was Shomer Shabbos, so had to do all that walking. But she was as determined to do it. My oldest son is a big wrestler. Yair is a big wrestler. Most of my boys are also wrestlers. And my oldest son was at Rutgers in New Jersey State College, so he couldn't wrestle on Shabbat. I don't know if he would have made it anyway. I'm sure Yair has his own opinion.
He would not have.
But he started his own wrestling club so that the people that couldn't wrestle on Shabbat had another option.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think people respect that. Like my coach in college managed to change schedule for us, but when postseason came, our conference semifinal, like just before March Madness came out on a Friday night, and I couldn't play in the biggest game of my life. And I stayed in the hotel on Friday night, and I didn't go to the game. And the guys came to my room after the game and said, "We want to let you know we won the game for you tonight. We respect that you didn't play tonight. You are our motivation. We did this for you." Like people respect that.
There's a lot more support. I think there's a lot more quiet support like that, but just also like we were in Israel at the end of November. I was at a restaurant, and the waitress comes up to me, and we're talking, of course, says, "I just think the whole world hates us." But I think there's a lot more quiet support. Like we go to conferences. I always wear my kippah. People come up to me and say, "We support you. Go ahead. Let's do it." There's a lot more quiet support, I think, than people realize.
Yeah, I think also like when I was younger, like when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, already going to all these basketball camps and not playing on Shabbat, it seemed so foreign when I would tell the other players, like, yeah, we don't turn the light on, we don't do this, we don't do that. But now it's easier to explain it to people because I think people realize what a blessing it is to take a break from technology, even non-Jewish people. And they respect Shabbat. And they're like, it would be so amazing if everyone in my family just put away the phone for the weekend and we had Friday night dinner together and Saturday lunch together, and we just spoke to each other and spoke about what we want to accomplish and stuff. It would be amazing. Like I think because of the internet and the phones now, people could relate to Shabbat a lot more. They respect it a lot more, in my opinion.
Agreed. So you've built this incredibly successful career, and you've got 5 kids. My big concern is obviously like I public speak a lot, and I've been to the Army, and we built a very serious financial services business. My big fear is for my kids that they'll feel overshadowed by my success and it happens a lot that people will be super, super successful, and then their kids won't be successful, or they'll blow all the money, or they'll have issues, or whatever it is. You've been super successful. How are you preaching to your children to live their own life and not to feel like they're in your shadow?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think 3 things. Number 1 is to like have the best marriage in the world and just love your wife. Like me and my wife are like inseparable team. And I think like the kids have such a Baruch Hashem healthy base at home of just like love and concern and everything like that. So I think like number 1 is have a great marriage. If you're married, have a great marriage and be that example for your kids. I think it's really healthy for the kids to grow up in that type of environment. Number 2 is prioritize the time with the kids. Like I've been offered so many times to coach at the highest levels professionally, and I turned them down every single time because those programs, you're never home at night, ever. And even when the game's over, you're going right into scouting. And I just chose family over, let's say, high level, really, really high level coaching. And number 3 is to just be as supportive to the kids as possible, whatever field they take. Like my oldest daughter right now is in public diplomacy in the Army, in the Israeli Army. I don't know anything about public diplomacy, but that was her thing. that's what she wanted it, and she chased it and she got it, and she's there now. And just like my mother didn't know anything about basketball, she just gave me love and support. That's all I could do for my daughter. Even I don't know anything about the world that she's in every single day, but she knows that I love her and I support her and I'm proud of her. And all I can do is try to teach her, do whatever you're doing for a higher purpose, whatever field it's in. So, and that's why I am with all of our kids, and each one's going in their different direction, and that's awesome. Everyone could use their God-given talents to better the world, and they're doing a good job of that. So I'm really proud.
It's amazing. And it's a really amazing lesson, because also, as you keep saying, it's not from you, it's from a higher power. So how can there's no shadowing, because it's not man overshadowing man. It's all God, and everybody's just living to this one higher deity and actually having something that's bigger than themselves. So you don't really get stuck. It's when you get stuck in the fame, then you can never be as famous. If you get stuck in the money, you can never be as rich. If you get stuck in business, you can never be as successful. You get stuck in all this stuff. But for you, it's just live a higher power. That's it. It has nothing to do with me. There's no overshadow, because I don't cast a shadow, because I'm in God's shadow. It's a very different story. It's really deep.
It's a really big blessing, because I remember going to the locker room one time, and like our star player was there. I'm not going to mention his name, and he had every single thing materialistically you could ever imagine, everything, and he was depressed. He actually came into practice drunk, and I said, "What's wrong? You know, you have everything going for you. Any materialistic thing you have." And he's like, "That's exactly the point." He's like, "Once you get it all, whatever you hope for, and it doesn't satisfy you anymore, it doesn't excite you. You already got the car, you already got whatever it is, and then that doesn't excite you anymore." He's like, "It's the saddest feeling in the world." And I was like, wow, thank God we don't really chase that in Judaism. It's not really, I felt blessed. I felt like lucky that like I didn't grow up like those weren't my goals, and I try to help him out and teach him to look a little bit deeper, and it helped him a little bit. But yeah, it's like by the time I was 16, 17, I've already seen all that. I've already seen all the players. I've already seen with my eyes all the materialism. I've already seen all that, and it's fool's gold, and a lot of times it's fool's gold. It's not. So we shouldn't be teaching our kids to chase that. Unfortunately, society does, but you see oftentimes a lot of those people, like they end up being really depressed and sad and have a really hard life, because it's fool's gold. It's not authentic happiness. It's not authentic relationships. It's not genuine feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree with you. Honestly, I do agree with you.
I mean, it's very rampant. And I mean, watch the professional sports, when they're done playing, they're like 30, they've got millions of dollars. They've got enough money for their third, fourth generation. But what are they doing now? I mean, and that's why you see like some of it's a suicide, and they're dogfighting, or, all these different crazy things that you hear. I'm sure there's plenty that are fine also, but the ones that you hear about, it's just rampant.
There's also a lot of them that unfortunately got taken advantage of and lost a lot of money and really have hard times. And those are the guys that I'm still really close with and in touch with. Those are the type of guys I bring to Israel in the summertime at camps, a lot of the ex-NBA guys. And they are the kindest, sweetest, most sensitive people you'll ever meet, because it's like Rabbi Twersky said, like, always hang out with the people that have been through a lot in life and overcame it, because they overcome it with a whole new sense of sensitivity and care. And those are my kind of guys. Those are the kind of guys that I want our campers to be around.
So our brand, so you understand, it's called Resilient Riches. We only work with people who have overcome obstacles. That is our model. We do not, we did a very interesting way to bifurcate who we work with. And we took our clients, and we said, what's the similar commonality between them all? They're not funny. They're not all super rich. They're not all doctors. They're not all divorced women. They're not all like working at these CEOs of publicly traded companies, but they're all resilient. And so that's who we've targeted to be our brand. Our brand is called Resilient Riches, because it's about people who've overcome obstacles and built success. It's very interesting, because that's exactly what Rabbi Twersky says. I actually love to get that, because now we should use that as a quote, because that's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, resilience, like probably one of my favorite words. Resilience, transcendence, all that's because if someone said, how do you bless your kids? Obviously, you always bless your kids with health first, but like the second thing is, I would say, I hope that my kids are resilient, because if you're resilient and you can transcend, you're unstoppable in this world. And you just reach higher and higher levels of potential, because you realize the challenges aren't there to break you. They're just springboards to reach your inner potential. And
Absolutely.
I
Listen,
agree.
everybody has ups and downs. It's impossible. You referenced also you developed this product and it was stolen from you. I'm sure we could do another podcast just on what happened there. It sounds
Right.
very fascinating how that happened, even though I can imagine. But everybody goes through ups and downs. What happens when you're down? That's what really defines you.
Exactly.
How is it that you've built such a resilient brand that's been around for so long?
Because of the way that I was raised from coach. I remember the first time he took me to play against college players, I was I was so upset. I actually started crying because I wasn't used to getting the ball stripped from me. I wasn't used to, like I was 16, these guys were in college, and I was going back and forth with them. And I remember one time getting so frustrated, like behind the hoop, there's like these like mats that you don't bump into the wall. And I just remember hitting the wall and being so frustrated that like, God, I can't stand playing against these guys. They're so fast and they're so strong, even though I was only 16. So my coach looks at me and he's like, hey, do you want to do this or you don't want to do it? Because if you want to do it, you're going to have to learn how to play against this speed and this strength. If you don't want to do this, let's just go home right now. And I'm like, I want to do it. He's like, well, then pick yourself up and go back out there and do it. And I learned how to pick myself up through basketball at a very young age. Like I remember having a really bad shooting night, like a year after that. By that point, I was like 60 Minutes was coming to my games, ESPN was coming to my games. Like I would have press conferences in high school with more media attention than NBA players. And I had a bad shooting night, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go out there. I didn't want to talk to them after a bad shooting night. I was like 17. And my coach listened to me. He's like, look, if you could talk to them after a good game, you got to go talk to them after a bad game. Like I'm 17. There's professional players now that are like 32 that can't do that. They'll just go out the back. They'll send someone out to say, hey, so-and-so's not coming out tonight. And they'll just go out to the back parking lot, the players' lot, and head home. Like I learned how to face the media at a really young age. I learned how to overcome terrible career-ending injuries, like 3 I came back from. And it's all because of the way my coach raised me, but it all boils down to playing for something higher than yourself too. It's like a relationship with Hashem. Like we always say, like Zek Keli Van Vea, like Ani Vahu is like you have to have that special relationship with Hashem. Ani Vahu, me and Hashem. There's so many times on the court in rehab and crazy practices where I just don't know how, playing on fast days, playing the days after fast days without recovering, like physically my body couldn't do it. Like how in the world am I going to be able to do this? And it's just because like I was like me and Hashem on this court. Hashem's the only way I'm going to be able to like, get through this situation here. I'm not eating and not drinking and having a 3-hour practice at UConn or whatever it was, and it's just how I was raised.
It's funny, people don't maybe not realize, maybe Yair doesn't realize, but players are fined. There's a certain fine that they get if they don't come out and meet the media after when, they can't just do what they want. So, Tamir's like, you're a 17-year-old kid. And yet, there's professional players in their 20s and whatever, maybe that they get a fine if they don't come out to meet the media. So, you can see that, that's very reluctant after a bad night to face it.
Yeah, my coach never let me settle. Like that's the thing. Like he never let me settle. Like what a bracha that is. It's hard at the time. It's hard to grow up like that, But when you look back, you're like, thank God I had that person in my life. And look, unfortunately, my father passed away when I was very young. No one expected that to happen, but I still had my coach. So, and my father-in-law passed away at age 59. And both of them were kind of like my father. My father-in-law was also like my father. Both of them passed away. So thank God I still have my coach. And
So sorry to hear that.
You've had a lot of moments that we've kind of covered during this conversation, but was there a defining moment in your life that allowed you to be this resilient? Like, was there a specific moment that you pulled from when you were 16 and you were like, you know what, I want to just leave, or I'm just tired. And yes, your coach pushed you, but you have to have that with yourself that allowed you to be so tough. Where did this come from? I mean, it's not normal.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like I said, also my Savta was a Holocaust survivor. She survived 2 camps and she raised me. And I just saw that even though she had tremendous pain from what she went through, the Holocaust, she tried very hard to live a very impactful and meaningful life and always have a smile on her face. So I try to do that as well. You know, I'm also very dyslexic. I could barely read and write, but I somehow passed the SATs, got my scholarship. Once I got to school, I made Dean's List, all from hard work, just pushing and pushing and pushing. And I felt like coach allowed me to miss practice and games on Shabbat. I, like, during the 6 days of the week, better prove myself, like in every race and every weight training and every practice, to give back. And I did all that. But unfortunately, once coach got fired after my freshman year, a new coach came in and he made my life miserable. And he actually assaulted me in the locker room. And after he did that, I did break down. I was done emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I quit the team. I never played another game of college basketball. I actually never got a chance to say bye to my teammates, even, because I just went to the police station and that was it. And that was a very, very hard moment for me. I was broken for a while. I don't know how, but again, I just picked myself up about 2 or 3 months later, said, I can't let someone break. I can't understand why this happened to me. I can't let someone else break me away from my mission and what God wants me to accomplish. I got to get myself back in shape. And I came back in shape. And that's when I got the call from Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel. And when they called me and they said, we want to try you out, I was like, well, I'm ready. And I was ready. And after that one tryout, I got a 3-year contract with Maccabi. And I finally got a full circle moment of being able to hug my teammates and my original coach recently at Dick's Sporting Goods in Baltimore, because when they wanted to launch the net, they said, which location do you want to launch it at? And I said, well, I'm from Baltimore. Let's do it at the Baltimore location. And I think almost every single one of my teammates and my original coach came to that event to support me. And I finally got a chance to give them a hug and tell them how much I love them. And we were hanging out till 4 o'clock in the morning. So basically till I had to get back on the flight to Israel. So I'm glad I was able to finally, 20 years later, have that full circle moment. But that was the time that I broke down, but I also came back stronger than ever from that. From the biggest punch, I got the biggest koach to come back, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying to us since like October 7th, like, oh, thank God you're in America. It's so much safer here. Israel's so scary. And it's funny that regardless of like a Jewish homeland, and the Jews are indigenous to the people of Israel, that we are safer in Israel. You will never, that is always the safe space to rebuild yourself, that so many people, and like, for example, my dad became a Baal Tshuva. He became a Baal Tshuva in Israel. He's originally from Canada. He could have become there, but he went to the Jewish homeland from somebody who didn't even come from a religious background.
That's actually not accurate. Yeah,
all right. Well, sorry, I tried to.
I became religious in Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, became religious in Toronto, finished undergrad business school, and then went to Israel for 3 years.
Still counts. But for me also, like, I found my identity in Israel, and I never even went to Israel until I was 18. That was just a big part of mine. So like when people ask me like, what religion do you carry? I say I carry the Israeli Jewish religion. Like that's where I find my religious belief. I don't necessarily say I'm traditional or Orthodox or this. I just say I'm Jewish. Like I have this Jewish religion in me and Jewish identity in me that's unstoppable. You have a lot of values in life, and you're such a man of faith. What would be, if you said to us your one main value, what would that be? If you put that in one word. I know that's a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not perfect and I make a lot of mistakes, but I try to win, and I've always tried to win each day for our God, not for me, my entire, like as far back as I can remember. You know, that relationship.
That is
with
more
God.
than one
And
word. That is more than one word, Tamir.
faith, I would say faith.
That's one of mine,
Faith.
actually. That's one of mine.
Faith. No one could break away your faith. Like someone could break your bone, but they can't really like break your faith, you know, in my opinion. And look, I can't really write. I can't really read. I can't really debate. I can't really do it. But like my father taught me, like, let your game do the talking. Like my father never told me like how to play better. He never said you should have got back on defense, should have made that pass, nothing. The only thing he said is like, let your game do the talking. And I think like, that's how I try to live my life. Like when it comes to like representing Israel or whatever it is, I can't like debate with people on Twitter. I don't have those skills, but like I can just bring a lot of like living examples of like amazing things we're accomplishing here in every realm, in sports tech, in diversity, in unity, in the incredible things that happen here. So like that's my style of teaching about Israel. Like I bring the NBA guys over with athletes for Israel, and it's just like straight facts. See the diversity, see how we're uplifting kids through basketball. Sports tech, like see how the sports technology that's coming out of Israel is bettering pro sports around the world. Like let your game do the talking. Like, so that's like, for me, the best way I could do it. There's other people that do it in their way, but again, it's all like wrapped in faith. Like that's what my movie is going to be all about. That, you know, my book is about that. Like it all comes under that umbrella, I guess, of like faith.
Were you always connected with the other players? Like there are other players in other sports. I forgot the name. Yuri something in boxing.
Foreman.
Yuri Foreman.
Yeah, I have a very, very strong relationship with everyone. Dimitri, Yuri, Ryan, Steinmetz, everybody, but it's always been that way because I graduated high school from a predominantly African American Christian school, even though I was Jewish, but they were Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, yeah. I graduated from a predominantly African American Christian school. I have the best friends for life since that school, best teammates. Some of them are huge right now, working in the NBA at the highest positions or college basketball. Then I came over here to Israel. You know, I actually at Towson, I roomed with a Muslim basketball player named Mohammed Fafana. Till today, he's like closer than a brother to me. Like then I came over to Israel, played with people from all over the world. So relationships are everything. I invest so much in relationships. I think God created the world for relationships. God created the world for a relationship with us. God could have stayed alone. And I invest so much in relationships with my family, with my friends, with my teammates, with my coaches, and people in the business world. Like I love relationships, love and invest a lot of time and effort in them because they're so authentic and they're such an amazing blessing. So yes, I'm in touch with the Jewish athletes and a lot of the non-Jewish athletes. And when they pick up the phone, like a lot of non-Jewish athletes, like they'll, Tamir, what's going on, my brother? Like literally like my brother. Like I love you like a brother. And I do the same way. And now it's like going down to the next level. Like guys who I played with, their kids are players and they're friends with my kids. And that just, I've done a lot of cultural diversity camps, African-American Jewish camps, Arab kids and Jewish kids together. We did a 2-week camp last summer. It was amazing. Just doing a lot of amazing work through basketball. Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing what you're doing. How can people find you? How can people follow you? I know you won't be tweeting so aggressively, but how
I
can
don't
people...
know. I think like everyone can email me or WhatsApp me. TamirGoodman.com is my email, or LinkedIn is I'm on there more than the other stuff. But any social media I have, but like the best is you could email me or LinkedIn me. Those are my two. Tamir Goodman. Those are my.
Tamir, thanks so much for changing the world.
Thank you.
Amazing to meet you. It's amazing to meet you.
I know you told your kid that you got 1 second, so you gave us you were very generous with your time, and we really appreciate what you're doing. Obviously, we've been noticing, and we're from the US, and we've been noticing what you're doing, and it's just so empowering and impactful, and we really hope that our audience understands how to actually build resilience across the board, and resilience through faith, and resilience through love and passion, and how you can actually change the world, not just through your words, not through your money, but through doing stuff every single day. And it doesn't matter where you are. So Tamir, we really appreciate you. We love you. We care about you. And
you guys too.
Excited to see your kids on at the NBA at the Shabbat. Maybe you just create a Shomer Shabbat NBA for itself. It would be not the best teams.
They have that in Israel, I'm sure. That's what they have.
I'm sure.
Thank you guys for your time. Bye.
Right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.